Part 1, The Wedding Day. Daniel had waited for this day for years. Finally, he was standing in front of everyone he loved, ready to marry Sarah. Sarah slowly walked toward him in her beautiful wedding dress. Everyone in the room smiled. But Daniel noticed something strange. Sarah looked nervous. When she reached him, Daniel quietly asked, "Are you okay?" Sarah smiled and said, "Yes. I'm just happy." The wedding ceremony began. Daniel held Sarah's hand and promised to love her forever. Sarah looked into his eyes and smiled. Everything seemed perfect. Then suddenly, Daniel's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. There was a message from an unknown number. "Stop the wedding. You don't know who Sarah really is." Daniel's heart started beating faster. He looked at Sarah. She was talking to her mother and had no idea what had happened. Daniel quickly replied, "Who are you?" A few seconds later, another message arrived. "Look inside Sarah's old red bag." Daniel looked across the room. Sarah was holding a small red bag. Then she suddenly turned around and looked directly at him. Daniel quickly put his phone away. Sarah walked toward him and asked, "Daniel, why are you looking at my bag?" Daniel froze. He didn't know what to say. Sarah looked into his eyes and whispered, "Did someone tell you about my past?" Daniel stared at her. Before he could answer, Sarah's mother suddenly called her. "Sarah, come here. We need to talk." Sarah walked away. Daniel looked at the red bag again. He knew he had to find out the truth. Part 2, The Red Bag. Sarah walked away to speak with her mother. Daniel watched her disappear into the crowd. Then he looked at the small red bag. The message was still on his phone. "Look inside Sarah's old red bag." Daniel took a deep breath and walked toward it. He looked around. Nobody was watching. He carefully opened the bag. Inside, he found several old photographs, a small silver key, and a folded letter. Daniel picked up the letter. His hands began to shake. On the front, there was one sentence. "Sarah, please never let Daniel read this." Daniel froze. Why was his name on the letter? He slowly opened it. Before he could read the first line, he heard a voice behind him. "Daniel." He turned around. Sarah was standing there. Her face had completely changed. She was no longer smiling. She looked at the letter in Daniel's hand. "Where did you get that?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "It was inside your bag." Sarah walked closer. "Daniel, please give it to me." But Daniel stepped back. "No. First, tell me why my name is on this letter." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then she whispered, "Because this letter was written before I ever met you." Daniel stared at her. "What does that mean?" Sarah opened her mouth to answer. But suddenly, the wedding music stopped. Everyone in the room became silent. Then the main doors opened. A man walked into the wedding hall. Sarah looked at him. And her face turned pale. Daniel looked at the stranger and asked, "Who is that man?" Sarah whispered, "My past." Part 3, The Stranger. The wedding hall became completely silent. Daniel stared at the stranger standing near the entrance. Sarah was frozen. Her face had gone pale. "Who is he?" Daniel asked again. Sarah did not answer. The man slowly walked toward them. Then he stopped in front of Sarah. "Sarah," he said quietly, "we need to talk." Daniel stepped between them. "This is my wedding." "Who are you?" The man looked at Daniel. "My name is Michael." Sarah closed her eyes. Daniel looked at her. "You know him?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes. Michael took an old photograph from his pocket. He handed it to Daniel. Daniel looked at the picture. It showed Sarah standing beside Michael. They looked much younger. Daniel turned the photograph over. On the back was a date from 5 years earlier. Daniel looked at Sarah in shock. "You told me you had never been married." Sarah began to cry. "I was going to tell you." "When?" Daniel asked. "After we got married." Michael suddenly interrupted. "That's not the real secret." Daniel looked at him. "What do you mean?" Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out another photograph. This time, Daniel saw something that made his blood run cold. The photograph showed Sarah standing beside Daniel's own father. Daniel stared at the picture. "My father." Sarah covered her face with her hands. Michael looked at Daniel and said, "There is something about your family that Sarah has never told you." Daniel turned toward Sarah. "What is he talking about?" Sarah slowly lifted her head. Then she whispered, "Daniel, your father knew me before you did." To be continued. Part 4 of The Secret. Daniel stared at Sarah. "My father knew you before I did." Sarah wiped the tears from her eyes. "Yes." Daniel could not believe it. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah looked at Michael. "Because your father asked me to keep it a secret." Daniel turned toward Michael. "Why?" Michael took a deep breath. "Because 5 years ago, something happened between your father and Sarah's family." Daniel looked confused. "What happened?" Before Michael could answer, Sarah's mother suddenly walked toward them. "Michael, you shouldn't be here." Michael looked at her. People deserve to know the truth. Sarah's mother became angry. "Not today." Daniel stepped forward. "No. Today is exactly the day I need to know." Everyone became silent. Daniel looked at Sarah. "Tell me everything." Sarah finally spoke. 5 years ago, my father borrowed a large amount of money from your father." Daniel frowned. "How much?" Sarah looked down. "Enough to destroy both families." Daniel looked at his mother. She had been standing quietly in the corner. Then she suddenly said, "Daniel, your father didn't lend Sarah's father money." Daniel turned toward her. "What do you mean?" His mother looked at Sarah. "He stole it." Sarah immediately shook her head. "No. That's not true." Daniel's mother pulled out an old document. "This is the proof." Daniel took the document. He read it carefully. Then his face changed. At the bottom of the document was his father's signature. But there was something else. A second signature. Sarah's father. Daniel looked at Sarah. "Why would our fathers sign this?" Sarah whispered. "Because they made a deal." Daniel asked. "What deal?" Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. Then she said, "The deal was about our marriage." Part 5, The Deal. Daniel stared at Sarah. "Our marriage?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes." Daniel could hardly breathe. "What kind of deal was that?" Sarah wiped her tears and said, 5 years ago, our families made an agreement." Daniel looked at his mother. "What agreement?" His mother remained silent. Sarah continued. "Your father promised to help my family if I agreed to marry you one day." Daniel stepped back. "So you married me because of a deal?" "No." Sarah cried. "At first, I didn't know you. But later, when I met you, I truly fell in love with you." Daniel looked at her. "Then why did you hide everything from me?" Sarah lowered her head. "Because I was afraid you would hate me." Michael suddenly stepped forward. "There's more." Daniel turned to him. "What more?" Michael looked at Sarah. "Tell him." Sarah shook her head. Please, Michael. Not now. Daniel became angry. No more secrets. Sarah took a deep breath. Then she finally said, Daniel, your father did not make this deal for money. Daniel frowned. Then why? Sarah looked directly into his eyes. Because 5 years ago, your father discovered that someone was trying to destroy your family. Daniel's face became serious. Who? Sarah opened her mouth to answer. But suddenly, the lights in the wedding hall went out. Everyone screamed. A few seconds later, the lights came back on. Daniel looked around. Michael was gone. And the red bag was gone too. Then Daniel's phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. You are looking in the wrong place. The person you should fear is standing beside you. Daniel slowly looked around. Then he saw his own mother standing behind him. Part 6. The person beside you. Daniel slowly turned toward his mother. She was standing behind him, completely silent. Mom, Daniel said, what does this mean? His mother looked at his phone. Then she looked at Sarah. Sarah immediately stepped forward. Daniel, don't listen to that message. Daniel looked confused. Why? What are you hiding? His mother finally spoke. I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? She looked at Sarah. From her. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. Daniel looked between them. Someone please tell me the truth. His mother took a deep breath. Your father didn't die naturally. Daniel froze. What? He was murdered. The entire room became silent. Daniel stared at his mother. Who killed him? His mother looked at Sarah. Daniel turned toward Sarah. Sarah shook her head. I didn't kill your father. Daniel's mother continued. I never said you did. Daniel became even more confused. Then who did it? Before his mother could answer, a loud noise came from outside. Everyone rushed toward the windows. A black car was speeding away from the wedding hall. Daniel suddenly recognized the driver. It was Michael. Daniel ran outside. But the car disappeared around the corner. He returned to the hall and found something on the floor. It was the same old photograph from the red bag. Daniel picked it up. On the back, there was a handwritten message. Ask your mother what happened the night your father died. Daniel slowly turned toward his mother. Mom. His voice trembled. What happened that night? His mother began to cry. Then she whispered. Your father was killed because of a secret. She paused. And I was there when it happened. Part 7. Sarah's secret. I was there that night. Daniel stared at Sarah. You were there when my father was killed. Sarah nodded, tears running down her face. Yes. Daniel took a step back. Then why did you lie to me? I was scared, Sarah whispered. Scared of what? Sarah looked at Daniel's mother. Because I saw who really shot your father. Daniel's heart began to race. Who? Sarah took a deep breath. It wasn't me. Daniel looked at his mother. Then he looked back at Sarah. Then who was it? Sarah slowly pointed toward the old photograph in Daniel's hand. The person in that photograph. Daniel looked at it again. It showed Sarah standing beside his father. But there was another person in the background. Daniel's eyes widened. That's... He recognized the man immediately. It was his mother's brother, Robert. Daniel whispered. Uncle Robert. Sarah nodded. Your uncle was there that night. Daniel shook his head. No. My uncle loved my father. Sarah replied. That's what everyone believed. Suddenly, Daniel's phone rang. It was Robert. Daniel answered. Uncle. Robert's voice sounded nervous. Daniel, listen to me. You must leave the wedding hall immediately. Why? There was a long silence. Then Robert said, because Sarah has just found out the truth. Daniel looked at Sarah. What truth? Robert whispered. Your father was not killed because of money. Daniel's face became serious. Then why was he killed? Robert answered. Because he discovered who Sarah's real father was. The call suddenly ended. Daniel slowly turned toward Sarah. Who is your real father? Sarah began to cry. Then she whispered. The man you have always believed was your father. Part 8. The real father. The man you have always believed was your father. Sarah stopped speaking. Daniel stared at her. What are you saying? Sarah wiped her tears. Your father discovered the truth 5 years ago. What truth? Sarah took a deep breath. Your father was not your biological father. Daniel froze. What? Sarah continued. The man you called your father adopted you when you were a baby. Daniel shook his head. No. That's impossible. Sarah pulled an old document from her pocket. Your father kept this hidden from everyone. Daniel took the document with trembling hands. He read it carefully. His name was there. But the name of his biological father was different. Daniel looked at Sarah. Where did you get this? From your father's old office. Daniel could barely speak. Who is my real father? Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. Before she could answer, the wedding hall doors suddenly opened. Robert walked inside. Everyone turned toward him. Robert looked at Daniel. Daniel, you need to come with me. Daniel stepped back. No. I want the truth. Robert looked at Sarah. She already told you too much. Daniel became angry. Tell me who my real father is. Robert remained silent. Then Sarah whispered. Daniel, your real father is. Suddenly, Robert pulled out his phone. A video began playing on the large screen behind them. It showed Daniel's father on the night he died. Daniel watched in shock. His father was talking to someone. Then the camera moved closer. Daniel recognized the person standing beside him. It was Robert. But Robert was not alone. Standing beside him was another man. Daniel looked at Sarah. Who is that? Sarah whispered. That is your real father. Part 9. The Truth. Daniel stared at the screen. The man in the video was standing beside his father. Daniel had never seen him before. Who is he? Daniel asked. Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. That is your biological father. Daniel could not believe it. My real father is alive. Robert stepped forward. Yes. Daniel turned toward him. Where is he? Robert looked down. He has been watching you for years. Daniel's voice became angry. Why did everyone lie to me? Robert took a deep breath. Because your father wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? Robert pointed toward the screen. Your biological father was involved with dangerous people. Your father discovered the truth and tried to keep you safe. Daniel looked at Sarah. Then why are you part of this? Sarah began to cry. Because my father worked with your biological father. Daniel froze. So our families knew each other. Yes, Sarah said. Your father tried to stop them. That is why he was killed. Daniel looked at the video again. Suddenly, another message appeared on the screen. Daniel, if you are watching this, I know the truth has finally reached you. Daniel's eyes widened. Then a voice came from behind him. Son. Everyone turned around. A man was standing at the entrance. Daniel stared at him. The man slowly walked forward. "I am your father." Daniel could not move. Sarah covered her mouth. Robert stepped backward. Then the man looked at Daniel and said, "There is one more thing you need to know." Daniel whispered, "What?" The man looked at Sarah. "Your marriage was never an accident." Part 10, The Final Truth. Daniel stood frozen. He looked at the man standing in front of him. "You are my father." The man nodded. "Yes, Daniel. I am." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Why did you leave me?" His father looked down. "Because I wanted you to live a normal life. I thought hiding the truth would keep you safe." Daniel shook his head. "But people die because of your secret." His father nodded sadly. "I know." Then Daniel remembered his wedding. He looked at Sarah. "You said our marriage was not an accident. What does that mean?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Before I met you, my father told me about your family. He wanted me to marry you because he believed our marriage could finally bring our families together." Daniel looked confused. "So you never loved me?" Sarah stepped closer. "I did not love you because of the agreement." She smiled through her tears. "I fell in love with you because of the person you are." Daniel was silent. Then his father spoke. "Sarah saved your life." Daniel looked at him. "What?" 5 years ago, she discovered that someone planned to kill you. She secretly warned your father." Daniel looked at Sarah. "You knew?" Sarah nodded. "I have protected you for years." Daniel finally understood why she had hidden the truth. He took Sarah's hand. "I wish you had told me everything. I was afraid of losing you," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "You almost did." Everyone became silent. Then Daniel looked at the wedding guests. "Today was supposed to be the beginning of our marriage." He looked at Sarah. "Now it will be the beginning of our new life, with no more secrets." Sarah smiled. Daniel held her hand. And for the first time that day, they were truly happy. But as they walked toward the wedding ceremony, Daniel's phone suddenly vibrated. One final message appeared. "You think the story is over? It has only just begun." Daniel looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at him. And they both knew.